Whatever.
All right. Let's get started. All right. Welcome to DenverScript, everyone. I do apologize in advance if you are just joining us and you hear this weird humming, concussion grenade ringing, or whatever it is people are describing it as. 3D printer's going next to my computer, and I don't have another place to go, and I cannot pause it without fucking up 15 hours of work. So, anyways, let's get moving. Quizlet is a proud sponsor of DenverScript. Mike, would you please give us the spiel on what is Quizlet?
Yeah, so Quizlet is an online learning platform. We have about 60 million active users each month. It's a place to go if you want to basically learn and master anything. Simplest idea, digital flashcards. More complicated, we have even more, kind of learning modes and learning styles for that. We are hiring, so if you are looking for a job, let me know, hit me up.
Sweet. So if you're interested in applying to any of those or hearing about those roles, hit Mike up on Denver Devs. Schedule, got kind of this intro, job announcements, what's going on in JavaScript land. Then we have our short presentation, which is Devin Wilson, about Snowpack and was it Vite? Something like that. Mostly Snowpack, I think. And longer presentation is our very own Kyle Coberly on web tooling. And then we'll have questions and closing thoughts. Job announcements. If you have jobs that you want to announce, please put them in the chat. We can tweet them out later, post them in our meetup, kind of share it around for you. We're an open collective, which means we are a nonprofit, and any donations we take, they will go right back into this meetup. Garrett, thank you for always being there for $5 a month, buddy. And Quizlet gave us a nice $200 to kind of carry us with our accounts for 6 months. So much appreciated. And if you can give anything, even if it's $1 a month or $5 once, please do so. It helps us just cover our bills. Call for speakers, always looking for new speakers. So please feel free to hit up Guillermo, Mike, or myself on Denver Devs, or you can go to bit.ly/ds-talk. And that will be the form for filling out for one to submit a talk. Code of conduct, be excellent to each other. I think we can all get behind that. Second bullet point, invite others to chat. That's usually when we're in person. And please, no statement questions. Like after a speaker has given their talk and you're like, well, here's what I think you should have done or whatever. That's just not cool, and that's, not being excellent, kind of being a dick. If you want to see the full code of conduct, please go to DenverScript.com. You can find that there, and hey, you know what? You can find the link to our Open Collective, you can find the link to our YouTube channel, and our code of conduct, and the form for submitting a talk. So, hey, DenverScript.com, go for it. What's going on in JS land?
What's going on? All right, so Chrome 90 came out. I think most of you have probably seen how we do this before, but for those of you that are new, we like to talk about what's new in JavaScript land and what we're excited about. So whenever there is a new Chrome 2 review, I like to talk about what I'm excited about to get us kicked off. So as always, the highlights video and the release notes will be linked, and we're going to share this list with the additional context that Matt will add from follow-up links that he gets and finds. But let's dig into what we have for Chrome 90. And like I said, the highlights video and the release notes will be shared as well. The first one that they showed out, I was super excited about. If you click on that Giphy link, so CSS Flexbox debugging. Matt, click on the Giphy link. So CSS Flexbox
dog
debugging.
walker was at the door.
It's totally fine. So anyway, so check out how cool this is. If you're debugging Flexbox, then if it is a flex type component, you can go to your CSS, click on a little new icon, and then you can like visually toggle the different, oh, here we go. Yeah, you can visually toggle the different Flexbox properties and like watch them change in real time. I just thought it was so cool. Like, I mean, it's, you know, nothing you couldn't do with writing it by hand, but it's just a nice reminder if you're not great at Flexbox at what the different things do, and you have them in nice little toggles right there, and then it'll change the appropriate CSS properties for you. So I just thought that was really neat.
That's baller.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's so simple, and it's, you know, not necessarily earth shattering, but I just thought it was so cool. So anyway, so that's in Chrome 90. So if we go back to the JS Slam. Okay, so they were starting to show you know, issues in the console, and instead of just aggregating them, now you can see here like where that mouse is hovered in the screenshot. It's now like a little tab that'll aggregate and pop up for you, and then when you click on it, you'll get the issues list that pops up on the bottom. So that's what that's showing there. The next thing is in Chrome 88 or 89, they introduced the concept of these trust tokens that in a trust token panel. You can dig into it more in the release notes. They get into what trust tokens are and how they're used. But the idea is for them to be specific tokens that are hard for bots to replicate. And so now they have an additional set aside panel for it in the network tab or in the application tab. And then you can see additional information on the amount of tokens that you have for those things. There's a few other things that were in Chrome 90. None of them were super earth shattering. So these are kind of just some of the highlights. But this is where we come to our next sections, where what are you guys excited about? And like I always say, this can either be something that is at like the JavaScript level in terms of, oh, this is new to the language in JS land, or it could be even higher than that. Like if there's architectural things that have changed, or it can be even lower than that, like significantly lower in terms of like low level. And what is it specifically for you? Is there something new that you discovered? And also, like we always say, it doesn't necessarily have to actually be new. It's like the CBS reruns back in the day. If you haven't seen it, it's new to you. So if you discovered something new that was cool that you want to share with everybody, you're among friends here who would appreciate the cool nerdy thing that you found or figured out. And so we call those high five moments. So we'll open it up to anyone who has anything, either something that is new that came out that you're excited about, something that you worked with that you're excited about. Let's start there. Who's got some stuff for us? And just go ahead and you can unmute and just jump in. Who's going to be first? Whenever we get a first, then other people start jumping in. Who's going to be first?
I got one.
Right.
I saw the other day the Node 16 release came out, and something really simple, but there's a timers promise API. So basically set timeout, set interval, those ones now. There's like a built-in promise-based version for Node.
Oh, awesome.
I've written countless times just wrapping set timeout and returning a promise that resolves when it's done. So that was just a nice little thing to not have to do that if you're in Node.
What's wrong with set timeout, man? For everything.
Cool.
But yeah, an easy way to just do a wait delay, essentially. So
and so sorry, so what was the is there a new call for it, or is it just you're saying just set timeout itself is now available?
It's so there was, you could do like required timers, I believe, before, and then now it's like required timers / promises, and then it gives you all the timers based methods that are using promises instead of a callback.
Sweet, awesome.
Yeah, also Node 16 just in general is out. So.
Awesome, cool, thanks. I keep waiting to see if you're gonna actually type something. I'll do it then. There we go.
I usually do that at the end.
I was like Devin was so excited about it, and then all you're putting is just no's. I didn't want him to feel like we hadn't appreciated what he was appreciating. Okay, cool. Justin, did I see you unmute with some stuff?
Hey, Justin from CLJS and CLJS Hackers. And I also work with a group called Code Katas. I host meetups out here in Seattle, so just like to put out my stuff. I know I also host a monthly meetup every third Thursday. course, looking for speakers as well. Got one lined up this coming up month. I do a Lean Coffee event every first Thursday. And then I do a Code Katas event every third Tuesday. So if anybody's interested in other events, checking out the Seattle meetup scene. It's all virtual nowadays. So look for SeattleJS or SeattleJS Hackers on Meetup. I also work with a group out of Florida called Code Katas. They do a few monthly coding challenge events. So check them out too. They got an event coming up tomorrow. But that's it. Just like to put that out there every time.
Yeah, sweet. Share some links if you don't mind in the chat, and then we'll drop them into the doc.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. Let's get a few more. What else are you guys excited about?
I got a quick general purpose announcement for those of us that like static types. TSConf is open for registration for this year. Just went available, I think today or yesterday. So if you're looking for statically typed stuff, check it out.
Sweet.
So I've got something on basically data fetching if people are using React.
Okay.
Vercel, that is the publisher, as it were, of Next.js, has introduced a new React hook they're calling SWR, and that stands for stale while revalidate. So on initial data fetching, which by the way, the underlying fetching mechanism can be something like fetch or Axios.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is it does an initial fetch of data, and then it will continue fetching from a cache, but you can set a revalidation timer. So it will go out and say every minute, check the data and then re-render on that new data. So that's SWR from basically Vercel, but it is a standalone React library.
Sweet.
You said SWR?
Correct.
Okay,
Stale,
thank you. I'll make it easier to find later.
Mm-hmm.
The link is swr.vercel.app, and basically stale while revalidate.
Nice. Yeah, and if you can, drop it in the chat, and we'll copy paste it. Sweet. That sounds really cool. If you end up working with it and you like it, that might be a cool thing to show in like a short talk, if you'd be willing to chat about it.
Sorry for that.
What was that?
A bit of a problem over this end. Up in Evergreen, we've got a massive thunderstorm taking place before our 10 inches of snow. But yes, absolutely. If we were looking at the application for SWR, and we'll do a talk if we implement it.
Yeah, totally. That'd be cool. And even if you don't, like, if one of those things were like as part of your due diligence, you decide to not go with it for some reason, that would also be a cool short talk, right? Like, here's SWR, here's what it does. We thought we were going to use it. We didn't for these reasons, either way, if you're willing to give one, I think there's a good short talk there.
Very good.
Cool. So let's do maybe a couple more. It seemed like we had a couple people that are trying to unmute. And to broaden the conversation so that we can get a couple more. If anybody has some, now that we're over a year into this lockdown, if you have any new and exciting ways to stay sane that you've been doing, maybe like now you're over your sourdough bread phase. If there's any new stuff that you're starting that you're excited about to make it through our home stretch here, hopefully in the lockdown, feel free to share that too. Let's just try and get a couple more and then we'll close out JS Land.
I don't know if I can just jump in.
You can.
Cool. So I don't know if this counts as new, but it's new to me and probably very valuable to other people because nobody has told me about it before. So my shell was taking forever to start every time, and it turns out that was NVM's fault.
Mm-hmm.
So I found one called an alternative to NVM called FNM that's about 40 times faster. and now my shell takes normal shell startup times.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did you?
Oh, I got.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No,
I
go
just
ahead.
said that's all I got. I just
Nice.
said that's all I got. So go ahead and whatever you're gonna ask.
No, I was gonna say if you've got a link to that repo, or is it just like an npm package, or
Let
a
me
brew, cask brew, whatever.
find it really quick.
Yeah, take your time. Just drop it in the chat if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Let's do one more. Who's gonna bring us home? Yes.
No one's got one. There is a new. I'm not sure who unmuted.
Oh, was someone else trying to go?
Yeah, I was just going to share. I'm pretty jazzed up on something called Stencil.js, which is a way to build web components that work in every browser. It's like they call themselves a tool chain for building web components. And there's integrations with React, Angular, and Vue, and all that stuff. So something pretty cool to check out if anybody's interested in web components.
Awesome. And then when you were getting up and running with it, did you just use their native docs, or how did you?
Yeah, just using the docs on their website. I'll put a link in the chat.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
Devin, it seems that Devin's a fan, so you got at least one person that's right there with you. Sweet.
Nice.
All right, Matt, bring us home.
There's a new course being released called. Thank you. I can't spell for shit. Practical accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a really long day. Do not judge my ability to type or spell at this moment, please.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is totally escaping me, and I will put a link into this, but she's a big deal in accessibility. Is it Sarah? Something like that. I'll find it and I'll post it in here, but working for Aetna, working for a health insurance company, I really haven't done tons with accessibility until now. So anything I can get my hands on for accessibility learning, I've been trying to get on. So yeah, I'll post it on here. It's looking interesting, but it's not released just yet.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, thanks everybody. And with that too, I'll say this is now like longer than a year that we've been doing this remotely. Still doing it. People are still excited about stuff in JavaScript land. We're still bringing it and sharing it every month. So really appreciate it.
Thank you, Martin. I thought I was crazy for a second. Cool. All right. Our first speaker is Devin Wilson.
Woo!
Woo! Everyone.
Cool. So we'll jump in here. I click back to the monitor switches. Yeah, so we're going to talk about unbundled development with Snowpack and Vite. Yeah, it's pronounced Vite. I had to I looked at multiple places to verify the pronunciation there. Also, my wife speaks a little French, and it's a French word, so that was helpful. I'm Devin Wilson. I am a software engineer at Unbundled. We are hiring. If you are looking for a job or you know someone who is, you can find me at Devtron on Denver Dev Slack or DevinW on LinkedIn. Just a little overview of what I'm going to cover. It's going to be pretty fast and high level, so bear with me. I'm going to kind of start out talking about the problem with bundling, and then go back in time, look at how we used to do things, talk a little bit about the unbundled development paradigm, and then talk about some specific build tools, Snowpack and Vite. So the problem with bundling, how much time do you spend waiting for your code to be transformed into a runnable app? Just think for a second. When I was thinking about this, the only answer that really came to mind was too much time. But really, it's as long as the bundler takes. Oftentimes, the bundler is the slowest thing when you have an app that has many modules. Talking hundreds or thousands of modules. And so that it may take a little bit to build your own app, but building the bundle takes a long time, and we've spent a lot of effort has been put into building optimizations to make bundling more efficient, but ultimately bundling itself is slow. And so there's some limitations to how efficient we can make it. And so I want to talk a little bit about the context and how code is actually transformed into a runnable app to kind of see where the bundler fits in this pipeline of transformation from text to a runnable JavaScript app. So we have a transpiler oftentimes using TypeScript or Svelte, JSX, whatever, compiling that down to ES5 JavaScript that can run natively in the browser. You have a resolver for taking any sort of require or import statements and looking up the file that those map to. You have a bundler combining all these modules into one or more bundles. You have a web server that's taking those files and serving them as HTTP requests. And then once those are actually loaded into a browser, you have the JavaScript engine that's taking and parsing and evaluating that. So there's a lot of different steps. I'm going to focus on the bundler, but wanted to provide a little bit of the broader context. So let's go back in time and look at kind of how we used to do things before we had all these fancy build tools that are really complicated and take way too much configuration to do what we want them to do, but we use them because they also make our lives easier. So we used to just load a bunch of files in the browser. You just have a bunch of script tags and then give your paths to your different JavaScript files. They're all kind of independent files. They share some global state. And so,
hey, Devin, sorry. Do you have headphones that you could plug in? It sounds like your echo canceling is making you kind of fade in and out.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Didn't want to throw you off, but want to make sure people can hear you.
Yep. No, good call. Up and have some. So. Okay. Is that better?
Sounds better, yes.
Cool.
I think we'll know once you really get going, but yeah, it sounds better.
Cool. Yeah, so the advantage of this approach is that you have no build or bundle step. I'm assuming you're just using basic JavaScript. And then your development and production apps are similar, which minimizes the risk of something changing in a different environment. Downside, obviously, is that you have global variables that you're exporting on or attaching to window, so there can be conflicts. And then the dependencies aren't obvious between your different JavaScript files, and the order that you have them in here matters. So there's a reason we kind of went away from this model of doing things that's not very scalable when you get to hundreds of JavaScript files. But there's some things that have changed since then. So there's some new browser features, which I think most people are familiar with now, but depending on the type of application you're working on, you may not be actually using. So ECMAScript modules or ES modules, essentially JavaScript can import other JavaScript files natively, and the browser knows how to resolve and load those. And then HTTP2, loading multiple requests for multiple resources in parallel. And so that helps hugely to be able to load a bunch of files without it just taking forever or having just a ton of overhead of having to have separate connections for each one. So that's kind of some of what enables this paradigm of unbundled development, these two technologies that really are kind of the foundation of it. So just as a quick example, what would unbundled development look like if you had no build tool? You just kind of were doing the really basic HTML static web server, using pure JavaScript, no TypeScript or anything like that. Yeah, you'd end up having a simple HTML file. You have your type module to indicate that it's a JavaScript module, and then inside that module, you have import statements instead of require statements, if you're familiar with common JS modules, and that kind of show which modules you're using from this one or importing from this one. So obviously it's a much better structure, but you still get the same kind of loose coupling if you don't have to have something that's pre-bundling ahead of time and that is kind of pre-processing JavaScript. Because if you think about it, what a bundler is kind of doing is acting as a compiler that has a special language on top of JavaScript that knows how to resolve these dependencies. And we don't think of it that way sometimes, but really that's kind of what it is. And so being able to reduce that step makes a big difference. And another advantage, since it's actually the browser that is loading each of these modules, you get native caching from the browser. And browsers are really good at caching. It's something that's an important thing to loading web resources. So one less thing that a build tool has to manage and do correctly. But what's missing from this? There's a lot of really handy dandy features that we've gotten used to in our build tools, and would be really nice if we could use those in this new world without a bundler. So things like support transpiling, dependency management and mapping. In this model, if library here is actually Lodash and I'm either pulling it from a CDN or installed it via npm or yarn, it'd be really nice if I didn't have to put a full file path here or a full URL all the time. And so having some sort of build tool to help with that is really helpful. And then hot module reload is the other one that makes a huge difference in reducing the amount of time that it takes between making a change and seeing that change, just giving a very quick feedback loop. And so having something that provides that API, because the browsers don't natively support that really, though there's mechanisms that are pretty easy to build on top of. So with that, can introduce Snowpack and Vite, the kind of two primary unbundled build tools. Snowpack, the first version was released in January of 2020. Its philosophy is really to innovate and push the boundaries. And then Vite, on the other hand, the first version was released in November 2020, so a little bit later. And its philosophy is a little bit more pragmatic, solving today's problems. There's those descriptions I got from a YouTube video that is linked in the resources later. That's a really good kind of comparison of them. I've personally played around with Snowpack more. I've been looking at the Vite documentation, and Svelte is building its kind of version of Next.js called SvelteKit. Initially, they were starting with Snowpack and they actually switched to Vite. Not because they don't like Snowpack, but because it had some features that they really needed. But they're both moving really fast. And so it's really hard to recommend one over the other because they keep implementing features that the other has. So just try to get a high level overview. You can look more at their websites, and they're both really good docs to kind of see what they do and how they do it. So at a high level, though, I wanted to mention how they work. So they're built on top of these modules in HTTP2. They're acting as that thing that's rewriting and resolving imports, which is really cool. Snowpack has a feature that it will actually stream imports. So you just have like a package JSON with the dependencies, and they have a CDN that is ES module versions of npm packages. And then it manages all that, so you don't even need to install the full package. It just pulls exactly what's needed for running in the browser. And then also the ability to lazy build modules. And this is the huge advantage of an unbundled build tool, is you don't need to build everything at start time. You just start the server, and then as things are loaded, you build those specific modules. And you can choose to eagerly build some of them if it makes sense. And Vite has some optimizations for that, for external dependencies that aren't really going to change much. And then, obviously, build tools can then provide a hot module reload API. So obviously, like any new technology, there's limitations. It's not going to magically solve all your performance problems. You still have to write an app that is performant. And then there still is a need to bundle for production currently. There's some overhead if you're loading tons of files on page load that aren't cached. we can kind of deal with that for development because we're reloading the same page frequently. And so we rely a lot more on cache than maybe an end user typically would. And then there's just some things that are more efficient, bundling some parts of it. So eventually I'd be curious to see if we got to a place where we bundle some of it and use ES modules for some of it. The other thing to note, there's this tool called ES Build that Snowpack uses and Vite uses in some ways. Vite uses rollup more, but there's a couple of places where it's using ES Build, and it's a new kind of it can act as a bundler. It's really meant as a thing to kind of build individual modules and then also do bundling. It's apparently really good for libraries. It's still lacking some features that you need for apps, but it's moving really fast as well. But it's written in Go, so that really helps kind of bridge the gap. It's a lot faster than Webpack, for the cases where you still need bundling. And then of course, we have all these fast new tools, and then we keep adding all these layers of transforms that end up slowing them down. So, but if you're going to have those layers, doing it in an unbundled way is definitely going to be better than a bundled way. Kind of probably the question on a lot of people's minds is like, cool, is this mature enough to actually start using for something? And I can't really tell you whether you should use it for your project or not, but if you have an existing project, if you're using Webpack or something like that just as a tool and you're not really deep into it, it's probably not that difficult to switch out. If you're doing a new project, it's pretty easy to spin up on these. They're pretty new. There's some rough edges, but they're mature enough to use. And especially Vite utilizes rollup plugins, and so there's a huge ecosystem there. And then Snowpack actually has a pretty good amount of plugins as well. So so here's some resources, and I'll send out a link to the slides later. I know I didn't go too much into Snowpack and Vite themselves. Wanted to kind of keep it more high level for the short talk. But any questions?
So yeah, I have one. You were saying that this helps for your development, but then for production, you still have to use Webpack. Did I understand that correctly?
You still have to use a bundler, so that's where ES Build comes in. Snowpack kind of has they're calling it experimental still. It's stable enough to use for basic cases, but if you have a lot of complexity, it's not quite there yet. But yeah, and then they also have plugins for Rollup and Webpack. Vite is built specifically around rollup, so that's the only option for doing production bundles. And that's really if you need to. So if you have a use case where you don't need to support older browsers, where you're not worried about loading a few hundred JavaScript files all at once when the page loads, you don't have to bundle. It's just for most applications running in production, there's some need to still bundle.
Right. Cool.
Does that need just IE, or is there problems with other browsers?
I think it's primarily IE at this point. I believe all the other modern browsers support ES modules directly, and they have for a little while. And so, yeah, I think we're kind of in this awkward place now where we've been for a while, where it's kind of like, yeah, do you need to support IE or not? That's a big differentiator. And then there's a little bit of some of the technology being new enough. And then I think a lot of it depends too on the scale of your application, how much you're loading initially. So the nice thing with ES modules is in addition to the kind of static imports at the top, you can do dynamic import. So that gives kind of a built-in mechanism for lazy loading code. And that could be really helpful to offload some of the overhead of loading hundreds of modules right away if you wanted to not bundle in production.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
there any sort of dependency management across the different like pages you might have during development? Like say you have an auth team that's using some version of a dependency, and then, you know, maybe a different team that's using a different version. Is there any kind of consolidation or anything like that across those?
I think it would be kind of up to how you have your projects set up, because you could manage them as like separate projects with separate dependencies. I haven't used the like Snowpack's streaming imports. You know, I've looked at it, but I haven't used it personally. But I believe there's a way in there to kind of set which versions you want to pull. Yeah, most of this is kind of independent of the specific like dependency management scheme. It kind of supports using Node or Yarn or like NPM or Yarn kind of style dependency management, and then they're kind of moving toward kind of the lighter weight web-based dependency management. And one of the reasons that Snowpack kind of has that feature of doing streaming imports is the idea that when you're pulling down a Node module, oftentimes you're getting a bunch of stuff that you actually don't need for your web app. And you have all these native dependencies sometimes that might actually introduce like a security like hole on your developer machine. And so, you know, pulling down only the JavaScript that's actually needed to run in the browser is faster, more efficient, but also a little bit more secure. Yeah,
I think we got time for one
answer
more
the question. But
No, cool, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Devin. Awesome talk. Maybe been interested in Snowpack for a while, but now I think I need to go tinker with it. So thank you, Devin. Up next, got Kyle Coberly, quality web tooling for the web.
Something like that. All right.
Yeah, I probably butchered it. My bad.
Quality tooling for web apps. So, hi, everybody. My name is Kyle Coberly. I'm an educator. I'm a management and leadership dork, and I am a software engineer. I'm going to be talking to you today about quality tooling for web apps. So we'll talk about what quality is. We'll talk about why you should give a shit about quality. We'll talk about some principles behind quality, and we'll talk about quality practices. And lastly, I'm going to leave you off with my checklist for greenfield stuff and stuff that you should do right away as you're working on your first feature. All right, so let's talk about the first thing. What is quality? So there's a few different like accepted definitions in the management world. The one that I roll with is when something does the thing that you say that it does. Does it every time? Does it in every case that you say that you support? And so if you're going to have something that's quality, you need to have some assurance that those things are true. So the degree to which you conform to that, that's the measure of quality. So it doesn't mean something nice. That's not quite the same thing. So you could have something that is inexpensive and not expected to last very long if that's exactly what you were intending to do. If you have something that's supposed to last for a year and it lasts for a year reliably every single time, that's a quality product. Likewise, if we say that our users can do a thing in a software app, if we say that our uptime is 6 nines, if we say whatever it is that we're saying that our software does, the measure of quality is how well it conforms to that. Oh, hold on, quick tangent. I saw the Stone Cold Steve Austin documentary this last weekend, and it was awesome. It was super good. I cried multiple times. Super good documentary. Highly recommend it. All right, so why does quality matter? Why do we give a shit? So the first one is that it's faster. It's a complete mischaracterization of quality, that it slows you down, that it's extra steps. It is extra steps, but the thing is, a lot of the stuff that we do, I'll do this one first. A lot of the stuff that we do to cut corners, to move faster, actually slows us down. So this is like an app over time. So we start out, greenfield app, nothing in our way, pretty easy to test. Maybe this first thing takes us 5 minutes to test everything the app does. And it takes us an hour to test everything the app does. But hey, we're only releasing once a quarter, once a month, once a week, whatever. And so we can kind of keep the entire app in our head. And then at some point, when we start adding new things, it starts breaking old things. So we go, okay, well, wait a minute. I got to spend some time to rework this. So it slows us down a little bit, but we're still making progress. And then at some point, it becomes very scary to change things. It becomes especially scary to delete things because I don't know what's going to happen if I get rid of this. What happens if I change it? So what do? You make your own little weird version of it. And so you end up with 4 classes or modules or functions that do more or less the same thing because somebody else made this thing. I don't know what's going to happen if I get rid of it. That's a quality problem. That's like your lack of quality grinding you to a halt. And so like this red area, this is enterprise software. This is why it takes them years to implement features that other people have already proven out. That's why even though you spend millions of dollars on an engineering staff, you still can't get anything done. And it's because of the lack of quality. So what we're going for with quality engineering is to stay in this kind of steady green space the entire time. That's fast. So like the Marine saying is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that's what we're going for with our approach to developing software. So I'm going to leave this one up on the screen for a little bit. I saw this for the first time last week, and like I haven't stopped thinking about it. This is so true. The things on the left feel like you're going faster. The things on the right are what faster actually is. So I'm going to give you like 30 seconds. Just read this for a sec. The one that I like say to myself multiple times a day is the first one. Starting feels faster, finishing is faster. I think about this from everything between like, oh, I haven't put my laundry away yet, but oh man, I really feel pressure to start this other thing. Or like, oh, I haven't done the dishes yet, but I really want to jump in on like making lunch or dinner or whatever. I never regret finishing something. I often regret starting something when I have a lot of work in progress. So that's one of the reasons that we care about quality. Another one is that it's really mentally exhausting to work on a shitty product. It just is. You work on something that like you don't think the app is good, that like takes a toll out on you. Compare that to, oh man, I work on the coolest app. We released the like most awesome feature the other day, and now it also does this. And I was looking at feedback from customers, and like they're able to do all this stuff they weren't before. Like I'm really proud to work on this product. Versus it's a job. I do the tickets that I get assigned. I try to do my best work. I don't know. It's all right. Like quality is a morale problem. And then the other side of that is the trust of your customers and your users. Like think about how you feel when you get burned by a product. when something doesn't work the way that you want it to, especially when it's a time sensitive issue, when it's something having to do with your money or your work or like their health insurance, any of those things where something doesn't work the way you expect. It fucking infuriates you. That's a quality problem. That's the cost of cutting corners. All right, so that's why you should care about quality. Let's talk a little bit about how we build quality into products. So first thing is that the timing matters. So if you can, for like 1 unit of work, if we have some like fun parts of that and like some not so fun parts of that. So think of it like chores, testing, documentation, cross-browser testing, checking for accessibility, some of those kinds of things. Those aren't very fun. Fun work is, oh man, can I get the feature to work? So one of the wild things about this is another thing I think about probably multiple times a day. This takes the exact same amount of time to do this stuff first. But one of the like lies we tell ourselves is that, all right, it doesn't matter what order we do this stuff in. So I'll do the fun stuff first, and then like I'll do my chores afterward. The first problem is like, no, you don't. Like that the stuff that you punt to the end is the stuff that generally doesn't get done because you're in a hurry. And so you cut corners. And as we've established, it doesn't actually make you move any faster. But there's another reason you should do some of these things, especially with web apps first. It actually makes you faster. If you write tests first, you move faster. If you like figure out why your initial approach to something was like a little bit funky and didn't work all the time, you save so much more time down the line. And this works on the scale of like minutes and hours in your dev work. This also is the case with like larger app development stuff in terms of the efficiency that you get. This awesome Tim Ottinger quote that I love, where he talks about it like, if all I do is work hard during a sprint, I don't necessarily get anywhere, like with the next sprint. If I spend some time every single sprint learning, improving tooling, doing things that make me faster, I reap those benefits on all future sprints. I don't get any of that if I just work hard all the time. So this is one of the reasons you want to do some of these quality practices earlier rather than later. Next principle is that handoffs matter. So like this is like a traditional software development practice. You cannot make quality software doing it this way. It doesn't work. This is what quality software development looks like. We can't break this into phases because what actually happens is you scope some stuff, you design some stuff, you develop some stuff, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, we actually kind of got this part wrong. And so we need to go back to design, and then design goes, oh, is that in scope? And then all this stuff gets to testing, and then testing goes, oh, we found all these things that you missed, but all of these people have moved on to different projects. We pull in the contractors to work on that. Meanwhile, nothing has been released, so zero value has been delivered for the customer. And also, everything I just described, those are internal problems. You could probably like jigger some situation where you got a perfectly clear crystal ball and you know exactly what you're supposed to build. Except this also like needs to account for external events, changing competitive environment, new ideas that people have. Like you cannot do quality work with handoffs. So instead, you need to have everybody working together on all of these things. Because you probably want to do a little bit of scoping, probably want to do a little bit of design work. But honestly, like I have the purple box in here pretty early because we want some way to, in an automated way, tell when something is done. Did we actually do the thing that we initially set out to do? And like, these aren't different departments. These aren't different people. These are like activities that one team is doing on something. So we want quality. We need people to like work together, not work together as in some silo hands off to another silo. Like these people need to be sitting physically close to each other in like a co-located environment. They need to be working together like minute by minute, hour by hour on calls remotely. But like that's how we get to quality. Is we can't get to quality by handing stuff forward and then throwing it back over the fence when it doesn't work. Oh, like one more awesome quote on this. This is from William Dodge, but I think it's often attributed to our Lord and Savior W. Edwards Deming. But you can't inspect quality into a product. So like by the time we get to purple step over here, the quality is either there or it isn't. Let that one sink in for a second. We can't find something here and go, oh, we made it right. Hooray. We can only build quality into the product. By the time someone's inspecting it, the quality is there or it isn't. That's not quality assurance. Quality happens earlier on. All right, and last thing, quality is not a feature. So like all of these things are whack. Refactoring tickets. We'll make it, is it accessible? Ah, shoot. Well, maybe just kind of push it out anyway. We're in a hurry. Oh no, you just get the feature out there. We'll have our like QA nerds. They'll figure out whether or not it works. Well, I have everything done except it's not deployed, except it's not styled, except none of those things are done. Done is a binary. It is or it isn't. There's no partial done. So we don't want that. What we want is that any unit of work is not complete until it's styled, until it's accessible, until it's deployed, until it's documented, until it's tested, until it's refactored, until you're happy with the quality of the code. Until like analytics, logging, any of the other things that like are going to be part of our app, any particular feature is not done until it has all of those things. That's what we want. That's quality. All right, so let's talk about a couple of practices that we can use when developing web apps that will help us hit quality. So first one, version control. This sounds kind of obvious, but there's a little bit of nuance to it. So as a measure of like how sharp your version control game is, how quickly can you roll back? This works on a bunch of different levels too. So like at a smaller level, I've been working on this code for half an hour and this was working a second ago and now it's all fucked up. Can you, in 3 seconds, get back to your working state? This also applies at like kind of a macro level. Your deployed apps, and we'll talk about that in a sec, how quickly can you get back to a previous version? So like there's a few things that I would have you consider. It's not just using Git, it's using Git well. Are you making regular commits? Are you tagging your commits when you hit like major milestones like releases and stuff? GitHub has all kinds of features around that too. All of that is part of your version control game. Are your like release versions staying in sync with whatever NPM says the version of something is? So these are some signs that like you are not using version control in a quality manner. Is like, that worked a second ago, and then you can't get back. Oh no, like our deploy broke, we roll stuff back. Well, we can't, I don't know how to do that. We don't really have great commits for that. We have to like look back through hundreds, thousands of commits to figure out which one that is instead of using tags. Or even if we want to look at the code from a particular version, but we don't necessarily want to deploy it, we just want to see what state it was in when that version was out. Is that easy to do? That's signs that you've maybe screwed something up with version control. So some practices that'll help are every time you go from red to green or refactor to green in like your red, green, refactor TDD cycle that you're all doing, right? That's a time to make a commit. So like, it should be pretty quick, but like when you're trying to merge those in to master, squash them so that you get the best of both worlds. We get some kind of atomic commit that says like everything that went into some feature, and then you, the developer, also get these save points every time something worked. And like, if it's a long time between then, whatever, make a work in progress commit. But as a goal, every time you get something working, it should be a commit. And like the best way to do this is if you have like Git integration with your text editor, where you can go, all right, I want to commit these 3 lines. I want to commit these 5 lines. I want to just this file real quick. These little things that'll help speed you up and give you these save points. And you don't use them 95% of the time. But when you go, I went down a rabbit hole with this refactor, that's when you're going to be really glad that you had that commit from 10 minutes ago when it worked. And lastly, tag your versions. So you don't need to tag all your commits. If you're not familiar with tagging, in addition to adding a like a message to your commit, you can also say, oh, and by the way, this version is 2.1.4. And so then when you're trying to check something out from the past, or when you're trying to deploy something on like your CI/CD pipeline, you can say, I want to work with this Git repository at this tag. Way easier than like trying to look up the hash for that or something like that. Cool. Quality practice number 2, containers. So as a measure of quality, how quickly can you set up the app? You bring up a brand new person to your team and you go, cool, here's the Git URL for our repo. How fast before like they're up and running, able to like write new code? Because I think in a lot of places, that's something on the order of like a week to get all that stuff set up. That's fucking dumb. So like, it's one of the easiest ways to just speed up your entire development process. Because like it takes a little bit of work up front if you're doing this with an existing app or a brownfield thing or something kind of like that. If you're doing this early on, absolute no-brainer. But even later on, it's worth like a stop everything to do this just because of how much speed you enable from this. You think about the cost of somebody not being able to do anything while they figure out the app, or that one, whether it's between 2 developers, hopefully it's there, hopefully it's not. I don't know why that doesn't work in production, but containers solve this problem. And then like, I've heard this story like several times in the last week. Or you go like, oh man, we're having all these problems. So somebody says, hey, what if we containerize this? But to like a manager who doesn't know what's up and maybe doesn't value quality in the same way, they go, all right, well, that's an initiative. That's a ticket. That's that kind of thing. And so it's all of this time before it finally gets approved. Meanwhile, we're still burning all of this time on this. So like, my recommendations, do it early on while it's still easy to do, because it is easy to start with this. It gets increasingly harder as you're tacking on more services and databases and stuff. That's when it turns into a project. But even if it is a project, this is such a force multiplier. Like, do it, it's worth it. Third quality practice, linting and formatting. So, as a measure of this, how much time do you spend formatting? And your instant reaction to that is probably something like, well, not that much. But consider that this is a thing that you're doing constantly. A second here, a couple seconds there. Over the course of the entire time that you work on a product, that stuff adds up very quickly. So that might be a syntax problem you have a hard time hunting down. You're looking through logs and stuff. You have a good linter or formatter, catches that stuff right away. And like, especially if you've ever been bit by like a syntaxy kind of problem that takes you any like amount of time, like these don't take a ton of time to set up. And if one person on your team is spared that, you get your savings back right away. They have all the time you spent manually formatting. And then you have like style arguments about stuff. So using linting and formatting tools kind of gets you past all of that. And so ESLint and Prettier are like a pretty good starting place for this. Prettier is a formatter. All it does is the like, all right, does the brace start on this line or the next line kind of thing. ESLint can also catch like more abstract style things, like do we allow a raw text input here, like some of that kind of stuff. So you also get some side benefits to that. And this is one that I see a lot too. Somebody makes a commit and it's like, oh, whoa, I thought that was a small change. Why did this touch every single file in the project? Is because they were using a personal formatter and it ended up reformatting everything. So because of that, one of my linting and formatting recommendations, make this part of the build process. Make it like a lint on save or a lint on commit or something like that, rather than, hey, we all have this personally set up, right? All right, practice number 4, testing. So my measure of this is how much time do you spend on manual testing? And this one's a little bit sneaky. So I don't mean a formal QA process. What I mean is how much time do you spend running your code? Like, this is sometimes called geek at keyboard time. Okay, cool. So I did this thing. I'm going to go over my browser. I click on this. I click on this. I click on this. Fuck. Automated testing helps us get past that part. It runs our code for us. It does lots of other things too. It is the formalization of whatever we're trying to build. These are the examples of how we think the software is going to work. It helps prevent regressions. It enables speed. It enables refactoring. It enables lots of other things. But if you're not all the way sold on this yet, how much time do you spend running your code by hand? That's something that your automated testing tools can do for you. So you don't click through your form every time. Something else does that part for you. So when you're not using automated testing, you guess at how something is supposed to work, and then you see whether or not it does. Over and over and over again until you finally fucking break something. And you go, oh God, I hate software development. Why did I ever leave the other thing? So this breaks us out of that cycle. So again, do this first, because if you're not doing this early on, you can make an untestable app where it's so difficult to tease out the individual pieces so that you get small, reasonable tests, that all you can test is this huge macro stuff. So when you're doing this on a small level, it actually influences how you write the code and it influences your architecture. And then next recommendation, test outside in. So like that's a whole philosophy. I think I've done talks about it at this very meetup. But we want to test what the feature is, and then we want to test how we're building the feature. So the idea is that we make these big tests that describe what we think that the product does. That's a building quality in thing. And then as we get down to the little stuff, because it takes a long while to make those go green, we make smaller tests. And then when all the tiniest tests go green, the tests above them go green, the tests above those go green, and now we have a working feature. And then lastly, once you have your code working, once the tests pass, that's when you refactor. Right then. Don't wait till the end. Don't wait till the end of the sprint. Don't wait till you get a refactoring ticket. That's when you look back, not even necessarily on the stuff that you just made, but look at the entire code base, all the things that you're interacting with. Are there any other things that need to be reimagined, use new abstractions, use old abstractions? Take that time to clean up your code, and then you don't need to have code cleanup parties. Now you don't need to do big bang refactorings. We're cleaning up as we go. That's part of the quality practice. And then lastly, number 5, deployment. So my measure of this would be how quickly can you confidently deploy, like a one-line change. We go, oh, I need to change this one line of copy on the front page of the thing. So the confidently part is, all right, are you sure that that's the only thing that you changed? And so when you're using, I've really fallen in love with GitHub Actions. It's the CI/CD tool. If you're not using this now, if you've never used CI/CD stuff before, like no excuses anymore. It's already on whatever repos you have on GitHub. So what this can do is say, all right, I'm going to take this code, I'm going to run your tests, and if the tests pass, I will issue a pull request to master. Or if it's on master, it might be, all right, anytime something gets merged in here and the test pass, I'm going to deploy this part of it over here. I'm going to deploy this part of it over here. So the kinds of things that this saves you from are, oh, wow, yeah, that will never work in production. But you don't find that out until you've already been developing for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it takes to get to that first deployment. Says you're only doing it once a quarter. Oh man, is it like an ordeal? And it's fraught with peril because the person who did it last time doesn't even work here anymore. And there's a lot of manual build tasks that you have to do. You make sure you tick every once of them. We got to increment the version number. We got to make sure the docs are updated. We got to make sure that somebody's run the tests. We need to make sure we're using the minified versions of everything. And then, oh, it's Friday afternoon. You don't deploy on Friday afternoon. That's too scary. But you do it anyway, and then something gets broken and everybody loses their Saturday. And so you scramble in a fix and it breaks something else because you were working too quickly. So again, do this first. Your very first commit should result in a deployment. It's easy to like deploy a splash page, something like that. And then gradually, as you're building the app, well, now we need a server. Now that server needs a database. Now we need this other service. Now we need this. Those are a lot easier to add in incrementally because you know exactly what breaks. Very difficult to do piecemeal. Deploy early, deploy often. So like from that first commit, and also if you have a new feature and you have passing tests, don't hold it back. Just push that out live. Get it in front of actual people. Brand new feature, whatever. Maybe people hate it. Like the faster you find that stuff out, the better. Don't batch this stuff together in quarterly releases. All right, so I said I was going to give you a checklist. Let's say you're starting a new greenfield app. These are the things that I would recommend you make sure you knock out as you're getting started. So I recently did this with an app. I've actually like used some of these things, but if there was something that you were going to screenshot out of this, this might be a good one. Some ones that like I always forget, having like a 404 page, favicons, that's one I always forget also. So like, and like if your app needs are like a little bit different than this, or I left stuff off, you should maintain like some kind of list like this for yourself. That when you're getting started, when you're doing that first feature, which is like, tell me the purpose of this product, like those kinds of things. This is the kind of stuff that you want to knock out right up front. So what can you, the lowly developer, do to help make better quality web apps? First thing is practice. So a lot of this stuff ends up being very onerous, and the manager goes, no, we don't have time to do that. I can set up a CI/CD pipeline with GitHub Actions in like 20 minutes now. I've done it a bunch of times. That's the practice piece. Testing is a similar kind of thing. Testing gets in the way when you're not very good at it. So take some time, even if it's not going into whatever you're doing right now, spend the time now to get fast at writing tests, get fast at setting up testing frameworks. The same thing with like whatever build tooling that you're using, get fast at that stuff. That's what keeps it from being something that's slowing down your app development. Next, if there's one thing that I could have you take away from this entire talk, it is definitely, come on. This idea that front loading the quality work does not cost you any more time. It feels slow because, oh, but I'm not getting anything showing up on my screen yet. Doesn't take any more time and speeds you up. If this is the only thing that you take out of this talk, like let it be that. And lastly, don't ask permission. You're a professional software engineer. Whoever is hiring you, like even if they are that in like some other kind of role, if somebody is asking you to build something, that's on you to determine what is involved with that. Don't let somebody else make you do bad work. I don't write code without tests anymore. And if somebody asks me to do that, I think that's like an ethics problem, is these products get used by people. And also we're trying to like use the investors' money wisely. We're trying to do all of these things. And remember, it doesn't slow you down. It speeds you up. If you want to be a professional software engineer, these are the things that we do. Nobody else can make you do your job badly. All right. And that's what I got for you. Fire off some questions, por favor.
Applause in the meantime. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
Entertaining and knowledge bombs as always there, Kyle.
Thank you much, sir.
Hey, Kyle,
Yeah.
question.
Mhm.
So for all the checklist things, do you have any good resources for getting started on those? And you can you don't have to list them out everything, but just like in general.
So like approach this stuff one at a time. On like those first 5, I gave you like specific technologies that you should check out. For some of this other stuff, I would say Axe is probably like our best accessibility tool. And there's a really good plugin for Cypress that will do, it won't do like all of your accessibility checking, but it'll check that like you have alt tags, like you'll fail a test for not having alt tags, for example, on images. Like a lot of that, and like there's things that every time I run Axe, I always get surprised by like, oh shoot, I really do need that, I guess. And then analytics, like I'm a big Google Analytics guy. I know like not everybody is like super pumped about that, but it's really easy to do. And if you deploy on Firebase anymore, you get it for free. And then logging, I use Sentry on my stuff. For design systems, there's a really good book by Smashing on building design systems that I like. Favicons, I look it up every time. I go, all right, well, here's the image, Favicon me. And then they just kind of shit out like the 20 icons that you need. App manifests are kind of a low-hanging fruit one where even if you're not making a progressive web app, you can still make a manifest and like throw your brand colors in there, like that sort of stuff. It takes like a minute and it will like radically improve the experience. It's a really easy thing to gloss over that takes like no time to get right. And I put this one in here for like, all right, if I have like a contact me form or something like that, all right, where are they sending an email to? What will I write them back with? I try to get all of that stuff kind of knocked out ahead of time.
Perfect, thanks.
What else?
You have quite a few people in here apparently speechless, so good job.
See, I'm going through the chat.
Oh, what's that Steve Austin documentary called? Where can I watch that?
Oh, it's by A&E and it's part of a series they're doing. They're also doing like Roddy Rowdy Piper and Macho Man. But it's like fuck, hang on. I'm gonna pull it up. A&E WWE Legends, that's what it was called. WWE Legends. And it's like a super high quality production value, like, and lots of really interesting behind the scenes stuff on WWE. Like, I'm not a wrestling guy. I was never really into it or anything, but I just became fascinated by like what the WWE effectively is. It's kind of like a circus. The entire organization is on the road, and it's a bunch of people who are trying to write a compelling soap opera in real time that also includes these like just phenomenal feats of human strength. And like just hearing them talk about it as a job, like I got a promotion by like I'm a face now. Like it was really, really interesting hearing a lot of these stories. And like it's not spoiling too much, but the Steve Austin documentary ends with like his final match against The Rock when he was retiring because he was getting like nerve damage. And hearing the two of them like just share this like really special moment together, it was beautiful.
Awesome, thanks.
What else?
I had a comment.
Yeah, hit me.
So just want to sort of reiterate all the things I kind of sort of mentioned and sort of like doing a day-to-day kind of thing really helps with keeping engineering focused in the flow of things.
Yes.
Because that is super important because Lord knows we get distracted all the time anyway. And so like if you have all these things taken care for you, like doing CI/CD, formatting, testing, automated things, it just helps tremendously on sort of bringing back your focus into doing the work that you need to do. So I think all those contribute absolutely to that point.
100%. What else? We'll do two more. I'll take one more.
When are you gonna get a haircut?
Fuck you. That's when I'm getting a haircut. No, like my hair usually starts out pretty good. I have like a hair guy now, and he's mean as fuck. So like yeah, like at 10 o'clock, my hair is usually looking all right. But I rode my bike twice today, and it's raining outside. So that's what I got going on right now. All right, thank you all very much for letting me present.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Devin, for presenting. Much appreciated. Always good to have speakers that just do a killer job. So thank you all for showing. Yeah, if there's anyone else that is looking to give a talk, please feel free to hit up Guillermo, Mike, or myself on Denver Devs or on the Meetup website or Meetup, though. Yeah, you know, one of the websites that we're on. But yeah, if there's nothing else, thank you all for joining. Catch you next time.
Great to see you guys. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
See y'all.
See you next time.